No one at Thorn Auto Performance paid much attention to Carl. He swept floors, scrubbed oil spills, and kept the restrooms cleaner than they deserved to be. Most assumed he was just another quiet face in a jumpsuit, grey at the temples, and slow in his walk. But if you'd looked closer, you'd notice something rare in his eyes, something sharp, like he'd seen more than most, but chose silence over boasting. One stormy Tuesday, everything changed. The crew had just received a custom vintage Mustang, brought in by an elite client who wanted it ready for an auto show within 3 days. But the car wouldn't start. The engine was custom-built overseas, and even the lead technician scratched his head at the wiring. Tempers flared. "This thing's a mess," muttered Jake, one of the younger mechanics. "Who designed this? A blindfolded robot?" "Hey, Carl," another one laughed, pointing toward the car. "Want to give it a try? Maybe your mop can fix it." The others chuckled. Carl paused, broom mid-sweep. His eyes scanned the car. Then he walked toward it. No, he's serious." Jake raised an eyebrow, not sure if he should laugh or stop him. Carl didn't say a word. He gently opened the hood, adjusted a couple wires, and closed it. Then he leaned inside, turned the key, and the engine roared to life. Silence. The entire shop froze. Even the client, who had just walked in with a coffee in hand, nearly dropped it. "You're kidding me," the shop manager whispered. Carl stood quietly. It was just the grounding cable. Back in '87, Ford had a similar issue on a limited. "And batch, this one's just a cousin of that build." How do you know that?" asked the lead tech. Carl shrugged. "Used to work at Ford, lead systems engineer, until my wife got sick. Took care of her full time. Now I mop." The room was stunned. No one had ever asked his story. No one had even known he had one. The client stepped forward. "Sir, are you saying you designed engines for Ford?" Carl gave a small smile. "Helped design. I was part of a team." That day, everything shifted. Jake apologized. The others, once so dismissive, now hung on Carl's every word when he spoke. The shop manager, a good man despite his obliviousness, gave Carl an offer, lead technician with pay to match. Carl declined. "I appreciate it," he said, "but I'm happy where I am. If you don't mind, I'll just keep sweeping and help out when needed." That night, the shop posted a short clip of the event on social media. Within days, it went viral. Millions watched the video of the quiet janitor who brought an impossible machine to life with a touch and a memory. Media outlets started calling. People across the country said the same thing. It's never just a janitor. It's never just anyone. Weeks later, Carl was invited to speak at a high school where many kids were being pushed into paths that didn't fit them. He told them that titles didn't matter. Character did. He said, "Whatever you do, do it with pride, and never underestimate." The quiet ones. We've often lived the loudest stories. From that point on, Carl kept working at the shop. But now, every time he passed an engine, a group of young techs followed close behind, watching, listening, learning. Not because he was famous, but because they finally saw him. A few months after the video went viral, Carl's life changed. In quiet but meaningful ways, local schools invited him to teach weekend workshops. He would show teenagers how to strip down and rebuild engines, but more importantly, how to believe in their own value, even when the world didn't see it. One girl, Mia, reminded him of his late daughter. She hardly spoke, but her hands knew. Engines like old friends. Carl gave her one of his old notebooks filled with sketches and notes from his Ford days. She wept. Meanwhile, at Thorn Auto Performance, the team dynamic shifted. Where there had once been arrogance, there was now respect. Younger mechanics began asking questions instead of making jokes. They came early, stayed late. They cleaned their own messes and helped Carl with his. They started calling him Chief. But perhaps the biggest change came the day a black SUV rolled into the shop, quiet and unannounced. A sharply dressed woman stepped out, followed by a camera crew and a man in a suit with a Ford pin on his collar. Carl wiped his hands on a rag. "Can I help you?" The man extended a hand. "Mr. Carl Morrison, I'm from Ford Heritage Division. We've been trying to track you down. The internet helped." Carl blinked. "Why?" The woman smiled. "Because we want to honor you for everything you did. You're part of automotive history, Carl. We're restoring one of your original prototype engines for our museum in Dearborn, and we want you to consult on the rebuild as our guest of honor." Carl looked down at his hands, still calloused from decades of work. Then he looked up at the team behind him, who'd stopped everything to watch. He smiled softly. "I'd be honored." That night, the team threw Carl a celebration. No cameras, no interviews, just music, food, and a cake that read, "To the man who taught us more than engines." And as the sun dipped behind the garage, Carl sat under the old Mustang's hood, a cup of coffee in hand, watching the next generation rebuild the future, bolt by bolt. Because sometimes the man in the background turns out to be the heart of the whole story.